Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa, Padurika Charja, Ashtotar, the Srimad, the Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa, Padurika Charja, Ashtotar, the Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiv Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 29th day of May, 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 12, Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. Text number 25. Danyam yashasyam ayushmam. Ayushyam. Danyam yashasyam ayushyam. Punyam svastyayanam mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Pashasyam Magamarsanam Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Pashasyam Magamarsanam Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasya Magamarsanam Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasya Magamarsanam Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasya Magamarsanam. Go ahead. Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Pashasyam Hagamarsanam. Damara, can you do it? Oh, the glasses thing. Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasyam Agamarsanam. Go ahead. Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasyam Agamarsanam. Dhanyam Yashasyam Ayushyam Punyam Swasyayanam Mahat Svargyam Dravyam Saumanasyam Prashasyam Agamarsanam. Okay, since if I don't tell you, you won't learn. Second line, you see the Y at the end of the swasti? So that's not sounded, that goes with the next word. So it's svastyayanam. See? Svastyayanam. That started out as an I. But then when the next word begins with a vowel, the I becomes a Y. So it becomes svastyayanam. Okay, try it. Svastyayanam. Yeah, svastyayanam. Dhanyam, bestowing wealth. Yashasyam, bestowing reputation. Ayushyam, increasing the duration of life. Sacred. Swasti ayanam, creating auspiciousness. Mahat, great. Svargyam, bestowing achievement of heavenly planets. Dravyam, or Dhruvaloka. Saumanasyam, pleasing to the mind. Prashasyam, glorious. Agamarshanam, counteracting all kinds of sinful activities. Okay, before I read the translation, okay. So, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's no verb here. Right? This is carryover from the previous text. This is just more and more benefits for hearing this pastime we just read. Okay. Translation. By hearing the narration of Dhruva Maharaj, one can fulfill desires for wealth, reputation, and increased duration of life. It is so auspicious that one can even go to a heavenly planet or attain Dhruva Loka, which was achieved by Dhruva Maharaj, just by hearing about him. The demigods also become pleased because this narration is so glorious, and it is so powerful that it can counteract all the results of one's sinful actions. Purport. There are different types of men in this world, not all of them pure devotees. Some are karmis, desiring to acquire vast wealth. There are also persons who are only after reputation. Some desire to be elevated to the heavenly planets or to go to Dhruva Loka, and others want to please the demigods to get material profits. Herein it is recommended by Maitreya that every one of them can hear the narration about Dhruva Maharaj and thus get their desired goal. It is recommended that the devotees, akama, the karmis, sarvakama, and the jnanis who desire to be liberated, mokshakama, should all worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead to acquire their desired goals of life. Similarly, if anyone hears about the activities of the Lord's devotee, he can achieve the same result. There is no difference between the activities and character of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and those of his pure devotees. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chukshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So throughout Bhagavatam, you'll find different pastimes recounted, great kings, great devotees like Dhruva Maharaj, Krishna himself, of course, and his avatars. And often there'll be, at the end of these pastimes, what is called a Palashruti. These are verses, a verse or verses that give you a list of the benefits to be accrued by hearing the pastime. And that's what we're reading now. It started yesterday. Maitreya is continuing. My dear Vidura, whatever you have asked from me about the great reputation and character of Dhruva, I have explained to you in all detail. Great saintly persons and devotees very much like to hear about Dhruva Maharaj. So they're hearing about him, hearing this pastime. And now we're going to hear some of the benefits. So the first ones are kind of material, right? Dhanyam, wealth, yashasam, reputation. In fact, all of them in this, except maybe achieving Dhruva Loka. But if one wants to achieve Dhruva Loka because of the longevity, one will get there, or some other reason, it's really kind of a material desire. The demigods become pleased, and it's so powerful that it can interact with the results of one's sinful activities. So that's a desire for liberation. The demigods are pleased, they'll shower down all the benefits, rain at the right time, just enough, all the things that the demigods can do for you. So one may ask, well, what does this have to do with bhakti? I mean, we're taught, even in our neophyte stage, that we're not supposed to desire any of these things. Desires for wealth, reputation. Didn't Lord Chaitanya say, nadanang nadanang nasundarim? He says, no wealth, no followers, no wonderful spouse, whatever. Just, let me please give me your pure devotional service. Ahoita ki bhakti. Life after life, that means no mukti. So what gives here? Why we find in the Bhagavatam, here it says, you can get all of these material things by hearing the pastime of Dhruva. In the next verse, again, attains pure devotional platform. It describes the real fruit, which is pure devotion. But the Prabhupada explains in the purport that there's different type of people. Those who approach Krishna consciousness for the first time are full of all kinds of material desires. And you may think that, oh, this is a nice place. I'll become peaceful, happy here, and I'll get some prasad. That's usually one of the main reasons you come back. The prasadam is so nice. So this is part of the strategy, of Krishna's strategy for drawing more and more people in. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, he says there's 4 kinds of pious people who come to me. The ones who want relief from some misery, the ones who want wealth, the ones who are just curious, which is another kind of material aspect, I mean, it's auspicious, but it's not really a desire for pure devotion. And then one who had knowledge, which is described in the subsequent verses as really one who is devotional and is described as, after many, many births and deaths, one surrenders unto me, understanding I'm everything. So the idea is that Krishna is, he's very eager that every living entity in the material world turns toward him and turns back toward him and becomes purified and goes back to Godhead. But it's not easy, you know. It says that Krishna can do anything, and he certainly can, but he doesn't force us to become his devotees, because that's contradictory, it's self-contradictory. If you're a devotee, it means that you're voluntarily giving your devotion, your love to whoever it may be, and that's, you know, otherwise you're a slave or a dupe or something else, but you're not a devotee. Devotion, pure devotion, especially prema bhakti, means it has to be freely given. So what's the strategy for evoking that? Well, it's understood that pure devotion is in there already. It's just covered, it's distorted, it's polluted by the modes of nature, by material desires, by our long sojourn, which means stay, not a journey, our long sojourn in the material world. We become contaminated, and so we're in a complete confused state, and our aspirations, our desires, are anything but service to God. They're a disservice to this body and senses and extensions. We know the whole thing. So how to take those contaminated souls, those ignorant souls buried in illusion, and induce them to practice devotional service, come in touch with Krishna, and thereby become purified and awaken their wholesome love for God, which will take them back to Godhead. That's the whole puzzle that Krishna is trying to figure out. And so he does it in various ways. He comes different avatars, different times, just suitable for the time and place, but always he's doing basically what he describes in Bhagavad Gita, reinstituting real dharma, and protecting the devotees, encouraging the devotees, and wiping out the miscreants, you see. Now, they're also devotees ultimately, but they need to be severely chastised and, you know, stop tormenting the devotees and screwing up the world. So that's what he does, basically. Now, part of the strategy is right here in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is manifested in this age of Kali. What's that? Krishne swadhamo pagate dharma jnana nibisaha kalo nashta dishamesha puranako dunodita. That after Krishna, when Krishna was on the planet, he stayed for 125 years. He did so wonderful things, spoke the Bhagavad Gita, engineered the Battle of Kurukshetra to reinstitute Dharma in the person of Yudhishthira on the throne, so that would help, you know. Got rid of so many miscreants, thousands of them, you know, demons who had become a real burden on the earth. And so he did what he always does. He's Dharma personified, Jnana personified. But then when he left, the question was, where does that Dharma reside now? What's going to be influential in this world to maintaining Dharma? We know Kali Yuga is coming, but what is going to be the countervailing force? And the answer is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam itself is the countervailing force. And it describes it's risen just like the sun after the departure of Krishna, who took Dharma and Gyan with him. He's personified, you know. But the Bhagavatam has risen like the sun to provide light to the benighted souls of this Kali Yuga. So Srila Prabhupada worked so hard. His whole movement really started, you know, his impetus to go to the West bore fruit when he had that first canto in hand. He worked so hard. I mean, I know what it's like to publish a book. You know, we're publishing Prabhupada's book. We had a whole team. We had all these electronics, you know, and everything. Prabhupada's all alone, writing, you know, getting the paper, buying the paper with his last rupee, you know, and printing one volume, using that volume to raise money to print the next volume. It's an incredible story. And so that, belief, that understanding, that faith in the Bhagavatam came from realization, from hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam and living the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is understanding fully its power, and that gave him confidence that he could go to the West. He practically had nothing with him. No money, no friends. His health was failing, but he had those Bhagavatams, and he gave him great faith. So we're reading the Bhagavatam now, and it'd say, well, okay, if you want wealth, here, come. Here the Dhruva story. You want fame, what is it? Increased duration of life, everyone wants that. Okay, here, the Dhruva story. One can go to a heavenly planet. That sounds interesting. Hear the Dhruva story. So the idea is like, it's just like the whole strategy for the Sankirtan movement. Somehow invite, induce, attract, trick even someone to come into the association of devotees, hear the holy name, and get a little purified. So you're curious, what was that far out mantra we chanted? I seem to get high on it. Okay, I'll read about it, chant and be happy. Oh, George Harrison, he's famous. Put him on the cover. That's interesting. I remember George Harrison. So, and especially the prasadam. Prasadam, was, that definitely brought me back. I wasn't a vegan. I was a vegan, not even knowing what a vegan was. I was just eating raw food, a lot of juices, I was super skinny. I have some pictures from that time, And I came to the temple, and they gave me this big plate. None of it was in my diet. Big halva, piles of halva. I said, no, I can't eat that, can't eat that, can't eat that. All right, I'll try it. Oh, wow, the halva. I became totally addicted. I would take 3 half-gallon milk cartons full of halva with me home, because I lived on the island. This was in Brooklyn, so I said, this will last me till the next Sunday feast, and it never lasted me the whole week. You can imagine, 1.5 gallons of halva every week, heat it up. So, okay, I didn't know much about the philosophy. Some of the things were too weird for me, but prasadam kept bringing me back. And so many people became devotees in this way. It is purifying in and of itself. It attracts you to Krishna. It's Krishna, food. So Prabhupada fully understood that. He started from the beginning. As soon as he had a little money, cook a big feast, invite everybody, and gradually had a group. So this verse is describing like that. Is that if you want this, all of which are material, hear about Dhruva. You hear about Dhruva, you get purified, you become devotional. And Prabhupada quotes the verse from the second canto. In the second canto, there's a list. Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, and he gives a whole list of which god or goddess to worship for a specific thing. If you want a strong, sex life, worship Indra. If you want a beautiful wife, beautiful body, I think you worship Uma. If you want health, worship Surya, the sun god, or whatever. There's like 20 or 30 of them. And then after this whole list, there's several verses of that. And if one looks at this verse separately, you say, what's this doing in the Bhagavatam? I thought the Bhagavatam was telling us to get rid of all of this kaitava dharma, which is, worshiping the gods to go to heaven and enjoy there. That's cheating religion. That's not what Bhagavatam is about. Bhagavatam is about Sanatan Dharma, Bhagavat Dharma, which means, defined right at the beginning, 2nd chapter, 1st canto, that Dharma, that activity which arouses your pure devotion to Krishna, which is a haituki and a pratiyata. A haituki means without any material motivation. Can't be without any motivation. There's got to be some motivation. The motivation ultimately is to please Krishna. And if you actually work in that motivation, you do those things that arouse it, you find yourself, the bliss is coming automatically. You're not doing it, I want to be blissful. Am I blissful yet? Wow, I had a little frisson of bliss there. Maybe I'll try to cultivate it. It doesn't work that way. You just forget about your bliss. You just remember Krishna. And that's haituki and unbroken. This is not once a week religion. This is not going to pray for some material things at the church or mosque or temple. This is every moment. Apratiyata means that every moment, this selfless service, selfless devotional service to Krishna with his instrument in mind, this can bring full satisfaction to the soul. So the ananda comes automatically. The moksha, liberation, that's in the background. That's another byproduct. These things that people are trying for so hard, happiness, material happiness, and freedom from pain. Freedom from pain means ultimately moksha, mukti. That's the ultimate freedom from pain. Freedom from birth, old age, disease and death. You see? And ananda, well, that's degraded into sense gratification and pleasure. We're searching for it there, but it's not there. It's just so frustrating, and it produces suffering. So that's not the source of it. That's the big illusion. But the ananda is there just at Krishna's lotus feet. Just cultivating the desire to serve Krishna, his devotees, and spread the knowledge and give others the knowledge so they could be benefited, just like Prahlad. And then one finds himself, he says, I can immerse myself in an ocean of nectar at any time. So what problem do I have? I mean, Prahlad proved it. He's sitting in a pot of boiling oil. Okay, his father's trying to kill him, but he can't. He's completely protected because he's totally absorbed in thinking of Krishna, glorifying the Krishna and praying to him. This is Prahlad. His father is a huge demon. He had conquered the whole universe. All the gods, except for Shiva and Brahma, and of course Vishnu, were bowing down to him. Narada Muni, he's telling the story. I also was bowing down because he was a powerful demon. He was already powerful. Then he performed severe austerities to become even more powerful. He got a benediction from Brahma. He won't be killed in a day and a night and this and that. And so he's ruling the whole universe. And here's this fragile little 5-year-old son who was unafraid of him. You know the story. It's very dramatic. His father doesn't know anything about him being initiated and practicing devotion and becoming pure devotee in the womb. How could he? So he comes out and he puts him in school and he's learning the thing, the little demon school. Machiavellian arts, right? Maybe Sun Tzu in there, I don't know. Who's the Chinese? There's a certain theoretician of war, I forget. Anyway, whatever it is, he's not learning bhakti in that school. He already knows it. So he's going along with the teachers, but he's not really believing it. So his father asked him, what did you learn today? What's the best thing you learned? Thinking that he'd hear, I learned how to, divide and conquer, whatever. So what does he tell him? He says, Tatsarumanne asodavarya dehinam sadasam buddhignadiyam asadgrahat hitvatmapatam griyamandakupam vanam gato yadhadamashriyeta. Those words were like suicide. That was the last thing that Hiranyakashipu wanted to hear. Because his brother, Hiranyaksha, his older brother, had been killed by Varaha, Vishnu, in a big battle. The earth had fallen to the bottom of the ocean, and Krishna manifested as a boar so he could root around in the mud at the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean, get the earth and bring it up. Meanwhile, Hiranyaksha is going after him and insulting him and picking a fight. And finally, there's this big battle, and of course, Hiranyaksha is killed. And so Hiranyakashipu, who was already an atheist, anti-Vishnu, became even more so, an arch enemy. So here's his son, his beloved son, who he's trying to train up to take over the earth, take over the universe, is saying to him, well, father, but Prabhupada makes the point, he doesn't really call him father. He calls him the best of the demons, Asurya Varya. The best thing I learned today, Father? Best for whom, Prabhupada says? Best for the embodied living entities who are always disturbed. Sadasamudvignadiyam. Why? Asadgrahat. Every word, there's a verse in the CC that says, what is it? Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. And that verse itself is nice and concise and true. So that's what Bhagavatam is. Practically every verse is essential truth spoken concisely. So he's saying, what is the cause of this constant disturbance of mind? And he's talking about us, the conditioned souls, the embodied souls. Samudvignadiyam means always anxiety and disturbance, coming. Either we have little periods of where it's kind of peaceful, but threatening, there's always anxiety. This is sada sabudvigna, asadgrahat. So asat means the impermanent, the temporary. We are trying to go from the asat to the sat. Asatomad sadgamaya. Isn't that one of the statements there, Ramapati Prabhu? You learn as a child. Asatoma sadgamaya. Please, O Lord, take me from the impermanent, from the temporary to the eternal. Take me from darkness to light. Take me from the death to immortality. This is like a nice Vedic statement. So this whole world is asat. It's constantly changing, including our bodies. So, but we're holding on to it for dear life. I always give the example. Some of you haven't heard it. Sorry, maybe some of you have heard it 10 times. We're sitting near the ocean, right? So suppose you go out on a boat, right, a cruise boat or something, and then it springs a leak. Oh, there's a crisis. Suddenly your your enjoyment bubble is punctured. You know, what was going to be a vacation becomes a crisis, and you got to get off the boat. It's sinking. So, because the boat is no longer viable to protect you, so you have to dive in, and you've got a life preserver. Okay, so that'll save you, you hope. But that life preserver is also leaking or something, you know, and it's also getting on water, and so you're in anxiety because you know you're going to drown. So everything in this world is asat, but we're holding on to it. The body, our bank account, you know, our illusions of security. It's all asat, but we're holding on to it. And therefore, there's always that anxiety, either present or right under the surface in material life. And just see the animals, you know, or some bird, you know, you found some worm or something, but something, the cat's coming, you know, I got to look around, be careful, you know. So he said, sadgrahat. So what's the solution? Hitvatmapatam griyamandakupam. Give up this materialistic family life, which is like a blind well. You know, blind well, we don't know what it is in the West. But you imagine in India where they dig these wells to get water. Okay, the classic well is a hole in the ground and everything. So in the West, you know, we have a well. Well, there's a wall around it and there's a bucket, you know. But in India, they just have a hole in the ground, you know, where they get some water up. So after a while, those wells run dry, and you got to dig a new well. And that hole in the ground gets covered over by grass and everything, so it's a trap. You're walking along nicely, and then you fall into this blind well. You know, but nobody is there. You see? And you're screaming and yelling, but if someone doesn't come to put a rope down there, you're finished. You can imagine. That happens. So he describes materialistic household life as this blind well. Griyamandakupam. You know? You're walking, you're in this situation, you can't get out of it. There's so many attachments and you just make more. So that's griyamandakupam. It says, give it up. Hitvatmapatam. Because the situation blocks your devotional life. It blocks it. It's atmapatam. It's a covering for the soul that is very tight. So he says, give it up. So what to do? Hitva. Griyamandakupam. Vanam gato. Go to the forest. What forest? The forest of Vrindavan. Vanam Gadoyat Haramashriye, and take shelter of Hari, his arch enemy. The little boy is telling his monstrous father, take shelter of your arch enemy, surrender to him, Father, surrender to Vishnu. So naturally the father wasn't too happy to hear that. But at this point, he didn't blame him, he was just a little boy. He must have been trained in the school. Maybe there's a spy. He looks at Chandanamarka, the teachers. What did you teach him? So we didn't tell him anything. We don't know where he learned this. So he said, oh, all right, well, take him and fix him up, you know, make sure, you know, he's just a boy, you can teach him anything. So they go and they grill him, where'd you learn this, Prahlad, where'd you learn this, you know, and they can't find out. So it happens again and again. But the point is, Prahlad was fully protected and blissful, even when his father was torturing. Eventually his father, he says, oh, he's incorrigible, kill him, his own son. He thought him as a danger in the kingdom. So he has his henchmen try to kill him in all kinds of ways, whatever they had at the time. Throwing off a mountain, crushing under an elephant, poison snakes, feeding him poison, boiling him in oil. They tried everything, chopping him up. That was the first thing. He was protected. He couldn't be hurt. He couldn't, not to speak of killed, he wasn't even being hurt. Just like Haridas Thakur. That's another amazing, that's a more modern story. So here we have another story of a 5-year-old, right, who also achieved this high state of Krishna consciousness. And what is being recommended here is that, okay, whatever you want, okay, just hear this pastime. And the fact is, if you hear the pastime ardently, receptively, that you'll become attracted to serve Krishna, to chant the mantras, you know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, to attain the state of pure devotion. We see what Dhruva attained. He went back to Godhead. It's very dramatic, practically more detailed than any other section in the Bhagavatam of how he was saved. And you know, remember the question came up that I think it was Rajendanandana Prabhu was saying. We don't find Krishna personally coming and taking, even though he says, I'm the swift deliverer. You know, here's my total speculation on this. Forgive me. If you read Krishna book and Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll find a certain description there, how Krishna's Leela are going on somewhere in the universe, in the material universe somewhere. It's just like somewhere the sun is rising right now. It's now, what, half an hour past sunrise here, but somewhere else to the east, right, it's just rising now. It's just coming over the horizon. At every moment, somewhere in the world, the sun is just rising. At every moment, Krishna is taking birth somewhere in this material world. You know, the Janmashtami is taking place. And in another universe, it's a little later, you know, he's running around stealing butter. In another universe, he's playing with the gopis. You see? So somewhere, at every moment, Krishna's Leela going on in this material world. And they're eternally, of course, going on in the spiritual world. So, but then, of course, the material world gets wound up, and then things stop for some time until it manifests again. So the way it works, it's described, is that, because, you know, Prabhupada says, oh, you can go back to Godhead. Well, being back to Godhead really means entering into Krishna's Leela. But in order to be trained up, understanding we all have our individual role to play, our form as a gopi, a gopa, a cow, whatever it may be, and we're fully satisfied and fully conscious in that role, we need to get trained. So after this lifetime, if we're fully realized, we go one more birth in the material world where Krishna is appearing. So he doesn't come down to get us. We're with him there. And as described in the 10th canto, because there's all of this saying, well, Krishna never came back to Vrindavan. But there is, in the Padma Purana, it's described how he did come back to Vrindavan. Because the residents there were pining away from him, you know, the gopis and the gopas and the cows, everyone. So he came back after, I won't get into detail now, but he came back. And at that time, he took all of the residents back with him to the spiritual world. He expanded himself. And so he took them all back, and they remained in their subtle forms, and he remained in his subtle form in Vrindavan. So if you go there, he's actually still there, you know, in the subtle bhava expansion. It gets complicated. And in another expansion, he returned back to Dwarka. This pastime, he killed a pair of demons called Vidurata and what was the other one? This is like one of the Shishupal, and who is the other? Who is it? Dantavakra. So he killed Dantavakra on the battlefield, and he was across the river from Vrindavan, Mathura, when he did that. This is how it's described in the Padma Purana. It's a big purport. It's not in the Bhagavatam, but it's quoted by Vishwanath in his commentary, and we put it in the Bhagavatam, printed by the BBT. So then he said, well, this is my chance, because he can't just leave Dwarka and go back to Vrindavan, because the Dwarkaites will feel this separation, and it'll cause havoc there in Dwarka, you know. So what is he going to do? So here he's got a chance, because he's on the battlefield, and they think, well, he's still in the battle. So he took the opportunity to go back to Mathura and then take everybody back. So anyway, the point is that Krishna doesn't come personally to deliver us, because he's already here in the material world. You go where he is, if you're perfect in devotional service. Receive further training in your specific service and your specific rasa. And then you go back, and you're eternally back in Goloka Vrindavan when that manifestation of Krishna returns. This is my understanding about why Krishna, you know, he says he comes perfectly, but he doesn't come down from Goloka and pull you back up. Because he's already here, you go where he's living and you develop, because that's where the sweetness is. The sweetness is where Krishna is manifesting the Vrindavan Leela. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, so this Prabhupada ends with a very significant statement here. We should all worship the Lord, we should hear about him. But similarly, if anyone hears about the activities of the devotee, he can achieve the same result. There's no difference between the activities and character of the Supreme Godhead and those of his pure devotees. Because when you read about his pure devotees, what are you reading about? They're different activities of devotion. You're also hearing about Krishna. You're also hearing about the Lord. And so it's all auspicious, and Krishna's even more pleased. He's so pleased when you hear about him in conjunction with his devotees, because they're most dear to him. So this is a part of the whole process of approaching the Lord through his devotees, hearing about the glories of the Lord. Like you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's so many descriptions of Lord Chaitanya's devotees. The whole Adi Leela, a lot of the chapters describe the different branches of the Chaitanya tree. But what are they doing? They're chanting Hare Krishna, they're worshipping Lord Chaitanya, they're manifesting different aspects of devotional service. So, it is now 8:30. I'm going to read this translation again. By hearing the narration of Dhruva Maharaj, one can fulfill desires for wealth, reputation, and increased duration of life. It is so auspicious that one can even go to a heavenly planet or attain Dhruva Loka, which was achieved by Dhruva Maharaj, just by hearing about him. The demigods also become pleased because this narration is so glorious and it is so powerful that it can counteract all the results of one's sinful actions. So it's an advertisement. Yeah, you should hear it. Hear it again. You know. Any questions, commentary? Hare Krishna. Yes. Wait a minute. Take this mic. Uh-oh. That's what happens when I sit too long.
What is the modern story of Haridas Thakur?
What is what?
The modern story of Haridas Thakur.
Story? Okay, I'll summarize. We have a couple of minutes. So Haridas Thakur is often said to be also a manifestation of Prahlad, is it? Yeah, and also Brahma. Yeah. So Haridas Thakur, just like you've heard Jayam Vishnupad, he's in the Prema Dhvani, we call it. You know, Haridas Thakur ki jai. You may not know who he is. So he was a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya. He was a little older, but he was born in a Muslim family. But somehow or other, I don't know the story, how he took up the chanting of Hare Krishna, and he took it up really seriously. He said to have chanted, you know, we're struggling to get through our 16 rounds. You're struggling to get up to that point, 16 rounds a day. So we're 16 rounds a day. So the standard in the Gaudiya Math, you know, Lord Chaitanya's devotees was 64 rounds, which comes out to about 100,000 names. It's a little bit more, but that's the general approximate number. So we're chanting about 27,000 names if you Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, because each time you chant a mantra, that's 16 names. So Haridas Thakur, he would chant 192 rounds a day, 3 times 64, which is about over 300,000 names. And they were asked Prabhupada, well, how long, you know? So they were guessing this, and when they said 16 hours, he said, yes. That's, of course, it's approximate. And 16 hours, I figured it out. 64 rounds will take you 5 hours and 20 minutes if you chant 5 minutes a round, which is really cooking it. You try it sometime. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, you know. We want to hear, so we have to chant a little slow. But he was, you know, expert. And I heard that he would chant at least 64 loudly. And sometimes I think, why are you chanting loudly? You know, you're supposed to chant in your mind. He said, no, it's more auspicious, it's more powerful because you're benefiting so many others. You know, you walk around, even the plants, the animals, the cats, the dogs, the insects, they're all benefiting from the chanting. So he would preach like that. That's in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So anyway, he was a Muslim and he converted to Hinduism, you know, and the Muslims were ruling. And you know how adamant they are, you know, even today, if you try to convert and they find out about it, you're in trouble. So, you know, he was becoming famous as this wonderful devotee who was chanting all the time. So they arrested him. They saw this as a threat, the Muslim rulers. They'd already converted a bunch of Hindus. You know, what do? Throw water on you or something? If you know, the Muslim throws water, you're contaminated, your Hinduism is gone, you become a Muslim. Whatever. So they arrested Haridas Thakur. There's two. There's the Qazi and the Shah, right? Hussein Shah. The Shah is kind of the king, but the Qazi is the sheriff. He's the local, you know, sheriff. So he was the real evil. He was pushing it forward. So they arrested him and they said, okay, you just say, there's one inshallah, what is this, some vow that they take, where if you declare your allegiance to Allah, then you're a Muslim. And so you have to say that again, you know, give up this Hinduism business and just come back to your glorious birth as a Muslim. So Haridas was protesting. He said, look, there's so many Hindus converted to Islam, so if one Muslim converts to Hinduism, what's the harm? So they didn't take too kindly to that, you know. So the Qazi was saying, oh, are you speaking back to me? Prabhupada tells a story like this. And if you don't utter this vow from the Quran, renouncing your Vaishnavism and becoming a Muslim again, we're going to execute you. And the form of execution common then was this horrific thing of beating to death in a marketplace. They beat until you're dead, So Haridas said this famous phrase, I don't know the Bengali, maybe you know, you can cut me up into little pieces, but I'll never stop chanting Hare Krishna. That's what he said. So that was it. So they assigned 2 big executioners and they started beating him, with sticks. So what was Haridas doing? He was just chanting as loudly as he could, or whatever he could. So he didn't feel any pain. So they couldn't, not only that, but he wasn't dying, he wasn't getting injured. So beating. So one marketplace, bazaar, to another bazaar, another 22 marketplaces. He still wasn't seemingly being affected by this beat, just like Prahlad. And so finally, these 2 executioners, with exhausted arms and everything, said, "Oh, now we're in trouble, because if we don't execute you, if you don't die, then we're going to get executed." And Haridas said, "Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry." And so he seemed to die for them. He actually went into samadhi, where you're hardly breathing, and it looks like you're dead. I don't know if you know, that's one of the states of high yoga, what Chaitanya exhibited also. So they thought he was dead. They didn't know that. So finally, so they took the body. They thought it was a body. He's actually living. Back to the Qazi and said, "Well, he's dead. What should we do with the body? Should we bury the body?" He said, No, don't bury the body, because that'll turn into a place of pilgrimage for these Hindus. We don't want that. Let's throw it in the Ganges. So, and then it'll just go down and crocodiles will eat it, whatever. So they threw him in the Ganges, and then he wake up. He came to, so to speak, swam to the other side and kept chanting Hare Krishna. Said, "Okay, that's it. We're not going to bother him again." They actually promised him, thinking that if you can survive this, then we recognize you as a very empowered soul, and we won't bother you again. So then he became even more famous. So that's Haridas Thakur. He also manifested that same potency, and this is his historical event. It's not something in the shadows of millions of years ago. You may doubt it. So Haridas was protected. Now later on, something was revealed that Lord Chaitanya protected him. That's why he didn't feel anything, and Lord Chaitanya had some marks on his back from the beating. So there's a lot of dimensions to it. So okay, just one more point. So Haridas was able to remain equipoised and blissful and cheap chanting when he was threatened with the worst kind of punishment and pain. On the other side, when he's a young man chanting, he was tempted by a beautiful prostitute in the middle of the night, because one Muslim guy, what was his name, Ramchandra Khan, he was envious that Haridas was so famous, so he said, okay, he hired a couple of prostitutes. Which one wants to go to try to seduce him? And his fame, ruined his fame and everything. So most of them were afraid. He said, well, I wouldn't, but one young girl said, okay, I can do that. So she goes, Haridas is chanting in a forest somewhere, he's chanting, and she goes, moonlight is romantic. She comes and does what she does, and she says, I want to be with you, So Haridas says, oh, no problem, but I got to finish my rounds. I've taken a vow to chant, 10 million rounds in a month or something like that. I'm almost done. So you just sit here, and then when I'm done, we'll be together, no problem. So she said, okay, cool, So she's sitting there, he's listening to the chanting. He's chanting, and the sun rises. Says, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't quite finish my rounds. Tomorrow night, So she was disappointed. So she went back to the Ramchandra and said, what happened? He wanted detail. Nowadays it would be, on your phone, show me what happened. So she said, well, he promised, it didn't quite work out because he had to be doing his chanting, so he was tonight we're coming. She says, okay. So she comes back next night, same thing, I'm almost done, just sit here. So she's sitting, she's getting bored, so well, what to do? So I'll chant also. So she starts chanting. She's getting purified. So the sun rises, she says, oh, I am so sorry, I was a little behind. You just come back tonight. She comes back the third night, and finally she realized what's going on, and she's inside she's a pious lady, even though she surrendered. Now she has become purified. Says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was sent here to seduce you." And he said, "I understood the whole thing. I could have left before, but I stayed here just to purify you, just for your sake." So she surrenders to him. He said, "What should I do?" He said, "Okay, you give up the prostitute business. You just sit in this kutir over here and just chant, and everything will be taken care of." And so she became very famous. People would come and give donations. She didn't have to worry about it. She became famous as a great Vaishnava. And Haridas went off and just kept chanting. So the point is, he tolerated. You can't, that's why it says, what is that famous verse? Matra sparshasta konteya shitoshna sukha dukkada. You have to tolerate, what's the tolerating the happiness? Happiness and distress comes. What's the big deal? I can tolerate happiness, no problem. No, you can't. You have to tolerate the allurements for material happiness without yielding to it. That's part of toleration. As well as when suffering comes, you keep your equipoise. That's real tolerance. And Haridas showed the supreme example of both. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.